So just to get started, a bit about me. I grew up as an only child, so my pets were always my siblings. However, I always grew up with dogs. I had never actually had cats until I started at APA. I graduated from UT with a degree in marketing, and wanting to use my marketing skills with my love of pets, I interned at Austin Humane Society in their marketing department, and then I approached APA for a marketing internship. The person I approached happened to be the cat marketing manager at the time. I didn't realize that APA would have separate cat and dog marketing. Austin Humane Society just had one marketing department, and so she was like, oh yes, we'd love to have a cat marketing intern. And I was like, oh, cats. Okay, I don't know anything about them really, but sure, let's do it. And the rest is history. Now I have 3 cats and 2 dogs, so cats now outnumber the dogs. And I've been with APA since 2013, working specifically with cats. I spent about a year as the cat marketing manager after my internship, and I've been the cat foster manager ever since. So a look at the cat foster program and how it's changed since I started, just so you kind of have an idea of the different perspectives I have on it. When I first started in 2014, we already had a fairly large program. We would utilize about 670 to 690 fosters a year, but I was the only staff person. I worked 7 days a week, probably like a lot of y'all. We relied heavily on volunteers, and we'd usually max out in the summertime around 300 to 350 cats in foster at a time. Fast forward to now, and last year we utilized over 900 foster homes, and we maxed out at just under 700 cats in foster at a time during the Harvey period due to all of our Hurricane Harvey pools from the coast. And now we have 5 staff members, 2 of whom are full-time and 3 are part-time, to help with managing all of this. So, what we'll cover, first, we'll talk about recruiting fosters. That's always a very popular question. Then we'll walk through the whole fostering process from start to finish. We'll discuss what to do with problem fosters, because no matter how well you organize your foster system, you're always going to run into some issues. It's people and animals, after all, they're going to have their own minds. We'll do a quick recap, and then we'll have some time for questions. So first off, recruiting fosters. And that's actually my son and the one over there with one of our foster kitties. But they are obviously the most important part of your foster program. Without them, you would not have a foster program. So recruiting fosters, it's all about your marketing. There is no magic answer that I can give you, no magic flyer that I can give you, no magic wording for a Facebook post that I can give you that will magically work for all of you. It's about your brand, and this is my marketing soapbox since that is my background. If you build your brand, you have your central voice. You're going to need to use that voice on your flyers, on your Facebook posts, so that way it is associated back with your organization. If you're just copying what somebody else said, will people know that that's you? That doesn't really help. So building your brand is the key part. And this is also really helpful for your foster program. Because any foster program, you're going to need adopters, you're going to need some donations, and you're going to need volunteers to keep it going. So if you have a well-rounded brand that talks about all of these things, not every post has to be about fostering. You have to talk about everything to build a full, complete organization and a full, complete fostering program. Now, you can definitely look at what others are doing and modify it to match your brand. For instance, this flyer was actually something that we had borrowed from a different organization, but we went through and we changed it. We put our colors on it. We did our logo. And you can easily do that with other things that other people are doing, but you just have to make sure that it matches your organization. And yeah, that's kind of the key part, is working with your marketing manager or marketing team, or finding a volunteer who is versed in marketing, because they're going to be the ones that can help you with getting the word out. So a lot of different areas where you can reach out to the community. You can post on Craigslist and social media. It's free. so give it a go. Flyers, take them everywhere with you. Adoption events, community events, wherever you're at, integrate your pleas for fosters into everything. You can also contact vet or vet tech programs, like training programs, for your more medical need cats, and kind of propose it to them as a hands-on learning experience. So that way they are more inclined to want to participate as well. And we also offer community service hours for fostering, not the court-ordered ones, but just general ones. So we have UT here, which has a huge student population, and a lot of the student orgs also require volunteer hours. So this is a way that they can do it. We have a teen foster program, so your National Honor Student, high school students, any other student orgs that they're in, they can also get volunteer hours doing this. Lots of options. But we do have that posted on our website to help kind of attract people to that too. And as I was saying, incorporate your foster pleas into your everyday activities. So bring flyers with you to everything. Add a blurb about fostering to your emails, like in your signature block, or for us, this blurb up here is actually on all of the emails that we respond to adopters with, or potential adopters with. When they email us saying that they're interested in a cat, we connect them with the foster, and we also tell them this. So we're telling people all day about fostering. And you can also encourage your adoption staff to mention it. We have a handy little handout in our adoption packets that are like ways that you can give back to APA. It mentions different volunteering opportunities, fostering, some of our most needed donations, but it's a key meeting point with people that you can address these issues that you need. We also will use cage cards for the cats in our shelter that need foster, that we're still looking for foster for. And it basically says, I need foster, ask about this. And that's a way to get people's attention that are just walking through, and they might not even know what fostering is. So it can kind of pique their interest. So let's look at the fostering process from start to finish. First, you need to get people set up as fosters. So there needs to be some sort of route for them to go. I would highly encourage an application, which I think probably a lot of organizations have. We do ours online, which, with Google Forms and things like that, you can easily set up an online application for free. But this way, people can apply from wherever. They don't have to walk into the shelter, which could cause delays. You can have an online record of it. You don't have to keep track of paper, because we have enough paper to keep track of, right? Oh, they're loud. So this is just sort of a quick start of our foster application. And really, we just ask about the basic aspects of the applicant's animal experience, their living environment, making sure that everyone that is in the household is in agreement to foster, asking what animals they have and stuff. But we don't actually use the animal experience as a ruling out point. I find that a lot of the fosters who, are UT students and maybe never had a pet, and this is their first time away from mom and dad, so they want to have that opportunity, they're really open to learning. Sometimes I get the fosters who are there I've had 50 cats my whole life. They don't want to listen to me. They're I know how to socialize a cat. And I'm okay, great. Well, can you keep it isolated for a while until it starts coming up to you? And they're oh, no. My cats will do it. And I'm okay, but then it didn't socialize with people. That's a problem. Whereas, the people who have never had animals, they admit their ignorance, kind of. So I would never rule someone out just because they've never had a pet. We also have a liability waiver on our application that they have to electronically sign. And this is part of it. It gets a little long. But it basically helps with protecting the organization. And I think that that's very important for any organization. kind of goes over that, like, we can't guarantee the health of the animals. We can't guarantee that they might not bite you because they are animals. And, we're not responsible if they scratch something or something like that. And so once you have all these foster applications turned in, somebody needs to go through and review them. So we have volunteers or staff, depending on how busy everything's getting, that call the applicants and perform a web search of their name just to make sure that nothing fishy comes up. And they basically just go over the applicant's answers and answer any questions. It is kind of rare that we deny people. It'll mostly be like, if they have allergies, we're not going to deal with that risk. It just seems irresponsible. And depending on the severity of the allergies, if something fishy comes up on the web search, or if it's just something really out of the box. But usually if they are going to deny someone, they kind of discuss it as a group and then come to that consensus. It's not just an on-the-spot thing. We do not do vet references. We don't do home checks. And I know that that is sort of a sticking point to a lot of organizations, that they insist that that needs to be done. Over the past several years, we have accumulated a list of fosters that we have banned, and there are less than 100 people on it. So, and that's 5 years plus. And some of those people, they're banned just because they decided to keep their foster cat and never adopted it. So I would say that the extra effort of doing the vet check and the home check probably isn't as worth it, just because we've had pretty good success with not doing it, and I think that those are pretty standard numbers, really. Even if you do all those things, you're still going to have people that cause issues. So our foster screeners, as I mentioned, they do a web search of the applicants. They call the applicants to review the application, which is probably one of the few times we actually call people. Usually we try to do everything through email. And they'll approve or deny the applicant. And then once they're approved, they send them an introductory email, which is sort of like our foster guide. But we found that if we have it as an attachment, people are not as likely to open the attachment. If you have it as just a long email, they're more likely to at least read some of it. And they add them to our email group. So our email group. We don't have everyone individualized out. We have a Google group. Yahoo also has an email listserv type of option. Both of them are free. And we can email everyone at once through that. It's much quicker, much easier. People can subscribe, unsubscribe from it, so if they decide that you're sending out 20 emails a day and this is just too much for me, they can unsubscribe, or they can change their subscription settings so that they get like one summary email of everything. It's easily accessible. Most people know how to use a Google group, so they can go through and change their settings themselves, which makes it a lot easier on you. So placing cats in foster. Sometimes a foster home is all that's needed to turn scary cat into comfy cat. We use email for our foster pleas. Like I said, we can email out our foster group all at once. It makes it very easy. We can use pictures, which catch people's attention. And you want to include any photos, age, special needs, behavior info, deadlines that are available. But you want to put this in a positive light. You don't want to just be like, cat's angry, doesn't like people right now, probably will bite you. Like, that's not going to get anyone to take it. So a lot of times, the ones that are in the city shelter, especially owner surrenders, they're going to be grumpy. But our city shelter does take owner surrender info, which is really helpful. So we can tell the fosters, it's really stressed out in the shelter right now, but its previous owner reported that in a home, it's XXXX, friendly or whatever they said. And that way you can kind of prepare the fosters for what to expect. But you're also not you want to be careful in how you word it, because you want to say that like it was reported that it's this way, because you can't guarantee that the cat will be friendly. Maybe he's only friendly with that one person because they've lived with them for 20 years, which has happened, sadly enough. And you can also get creative with them. Sometimes reading the same structure over and over and over will get very boring to your foster base. So trying to make your foster plays a little bit more fun will help with catching their attention. And using like current events and stuff can be an easy way to do that. So like on New Year's or Christmas, things like that, tying in what's going on timeline-wise with your foster pleas can help. And once you start getting to a certain size, eventually sending out the foster pleas yourself gets a little bit time-consuming. So you can work on getting volunteers to do this as well. They basically just put the foster pleas together. They'll answer questions about the cats in need of foster that come in from the responses, and they'll arrange the foster placements themselves, which is pretty simple. If the cat's at the city shelter, you have to find a way to get it there to you so that it can go to the foster. So whatever your process is for that, then communicating that with the foster who's lined up for it so they can pick it up. If it's transferring from another foster, usually we just connect them and let them sort out their schedule rather than acting as middleman. Or if they're coming from the adoption center or like your own location, that's pretty easy because you can just tell them your hours and be like, when would you like to come by? But a lot of times the questions can be a little trickier, and you might not know all the info. And it's fine to tell people you don't know. They might ask you, what type of food do they like? And you don't know. Especially if they're not at your shelter. If they're at the city shelter, probably whatever the city shelter is feeding them. They might ask them if they like dogs, and you've probably never had them around dogs if they're in your shelter, if they're not in a foster home. So a lot of these things you might just not know. And it's fine to tell people that. So making sure it's a good fit. Big part of the foster placement process is getting the cat into the right type of home, so that way the foster and the cat can succeed. We ask that all of our foster cats be isolated for the first 10 to 14 days. One, to help with proper introductions to resident pets for, scent first type of stuff. Two, because cats get scared moving to new environments, so kind of starting out in a smaller space like a bathroom or a spare bedroom is a little bit less overwhelming to them, so they can kind of settle down. And three, because they're coming, especially if they're coming from the shelter environment, they might have been exposed to germs. It's basically just a big kitty daycare, so everyone gets everything. And this way they have some time to help make sure that if they do have anything, it can be treated before the resident pets are exposed to it. So you also want to know about resident pets or kids, especially if you're working with an animal that has certain medical needs that would be particularly contagious. Things like URI and certain diarrhea and stuff like that, it's usually not as huge of a deal. But when you get into like calicivirus or certain things that can be a little bit more vaccine resistant and a little bit more dangerous, then you might want to have them in homes that don't have other cats. Kids are important because if it's a bite risk, usually children aren't as adept at reading those signals, so it might be a little bit more dangerous to put them in a foster home with kids. And you want to know if any of the cats involved are feline leukemia positive. We will not place feline leukemia positive cats in foster homes or adoptive homes with cats that are feline leukemia negative. We just don't mingle them. FIV, we do mingle, that doesn't matter to us. But feline leukemia is a bit of a different animal. You also want to address the different medical care that's needed with the foster. So if you have a diabetic cat, making sure that they're aware that it needs insulin injections. Are they comfortable with a needle? It's a tiny needle, but it is still a needle nonetheless. Some fosters, especially ones that are just starting out, might not be as comfortable with oral medicines. And so at least addressing that it will probably need that, mentioning how to do it, and that it's kind of a very basic level medical treatment can help with getting them sort of over that hump. And is the foster ready to work with them on whatever behavior or socialization needs they need? So we have a socialization handout that we will send to fosters when they offer to foster a socialization cat, and just make sure that they're aware of that's the type of fostering experience that they're volunteering for, and checking to make sure they're okay with that before we actually send the cat to them. Because it is sort of a little bit of a commitment to work with the cat and not just let it run loose in your home and never socialize. So as I mentioned, where the cat's moving from is a big part of how you arrange pickup. If they're coming from the city shelter, already at your facility, or moving in between foster homes. And so once the cat is in the foster home, you have to track it somehow. So we do sort of a dual tracking system. We use our database, which is Shelter Love, and we use a Google Sheet spreadsheet, which gets pretty massive. So that way we can kind of have some checks and balances, make sure we have everything lined up. The Google Sheet spreadsheet also works as a nice dashboard view of everything. So it's a little easier to see some things. You can also note certain things that your database might not be able to as well. So we always want to kind of see the important columns. We want to see the basics of the cat, age, gender, if it's been spayed or neutered yet, the ID number, and then we want to list why it's in foster. That's helpful for keeping track of when can it leave foster. If it's in foster for socialization, after a few weeks you might want to check in and see how it's doing and see if you can move it into the adoption center if it's socialized. If it's in foster for ringworm, you kind of have an idea of how long that treatment should be. If it's in foster for renal failure, you know that that's not going to be treated. It gives you an idea of how long these cats should be there, which is why you want to track the length of stay with them. Then you also want to record the foster name and contact info, so you can easily contact them whenever you do have questions. And you can add a section for check-in notes, or you can just search back in your inbox, whichever is easier for you, but this way you can kind of have it all in one section. And you want to make sure that the Google spreadsheet is accessible by everyone that needs it, which is why Google is a good option for it, because you can share it through Drive with everyone else. If you just have a normal Excel spreadsheet, it's sort of limited in who can see it, or at least who can see it in live time. So they might have a version that's 1 year old and totally not right anymore. So I do have an example version of our spreadsheet that has our formulas and everything. And if you would like it, you can go ahead and email me, and my email's down at the bottom there. So once the fosters get their foster cat, they need to know some info about it. So we have an introductory email that we send to them. It's a canned response, which makes it pretty easy. So a lot of the information is the same because it has to do with their fostering program. But you will go through and customize it with the animal's basic information, their ID number, their date of birth, letting them know if the cat's been spayed or neutered yet, so that way they know if they need to schedule it or not, when the next vaccines are due, and then you get into your canned response stuff, the information for scheduling appointments and marketing fosters, because that's going to be the same for any cat. The pathway for questions. So for us, we assign mentors who are volunteers to our fosters, and that way they have more of a specialized go-to person for their questions. And as I mentioned, you can set it up as a canned response, so that way you're not having to type all this stuff out every single time. So our foster mentors, they are all volunteers, and they're responsible for checking in with the fosters. With adult cats, we ask that they check in every 4 weeks. With kittens, every 2 weeks. Because kittens need a lot more vaccines, so it's important to check in with them and kind of remind the fosters to go and get that taken care of. And this is just the foster mentors going and reaching out to them specifically. If the fosters themselves have questions, then of course we answer those as they come in. We don't make them wait weeks. And so yeah, they are responsible for answering foster questions. And if they don't know the answer or they're not certain, then they can forward it along to whoever the question pertains to the most. And we do our foster mentors in specialties. I believe the dog foster program does it alphabetically, so it could be however works for you. But we have foster mentors who specialize in kittens, especially the ones that come up from our neonatal program, in feline leukemia, behavior, medical, such as ringworm or hospice, things like that. So they're a little more well-versed in what fosters might need going into that type of fostering experience. So the check-ins, they're obviously a bit more personalized because it's going directly to the person who has the animal. You want to check on the progress of the cat. How is it doing on its ringworm treatment? You'll, of course, check to see has it been into the clinic recently to make any progress on its treatment of whatever is going on with it. How's it doing on its socialization, etc. Has it settled in? Because, usually the first week is a little rough on the adult cats especially. And so that's when you are also making sure that the needs are being met, especially marketing too. They can't get adopted if they don't have photos, at least photos, but we also like to have personality info so that our marketing team can better spread the word about them. And as I mentioned, they check in every 2 to 4 weeks. And so how does the cat leave foster? Well, these are actually 2 of my cats who I foster failed on. So that was one way for them to leave. So there are generally 4 pathways. And I actually didn't notice this originally when I was making this presentation, but Francis here is also a cat who was foster failed by one of our fosters. So apparently I'm really pushing this adoption route. Usually they'll leave your foster program in one of 4 ways. They'll get adopted, which is the happy way for them to leave, right? Or the foster needs the cat moved. So they're moving themselves, or they have family coming into town, or they're going out of town for the holidays or whatever. They need the foster cat moved for some reason. So then it will probably either come into your adoption center or move to a new foster, depending on the cat's needs. Because some cats just simply aren't adoption centerable. So when they do move into the adoption center, you want to make sure that you're doing that with cats who it's appropriate. That they have completed whatever work they needed in foster. So, your hospice guys, they're not going to complete that work. They will probably never be adoption centerable. Your renal failure, diabetics, long-term medical stuff, they will probably never be very adoption centerable. And so those are going to be the ones who are usually in foster until they get adopted, or until, unfortunately, the cat passes away, which is, of course, the least happy outcome. But it is a reality of working with animals, especially when you do work with hospice animals or the longer-term medical or the tiny, tiny kittens. And so it's something that you want to make sure that you have a process set up for your fosters and that you kind of approach as a reality. You don't want them to feel like they failed because it happened, because, you want to make sure that they have a realistic expectation. Even our neonatal nursery, they have about a 90% live animal outcome rate type of thing, because the tiny babies are so fragile. So addressing that with fosters when they take it kind of helps give them a better mindset in case it does happen. And unfortunately, it is a way that we do lose some fosters because it is very disappointing and discouraging. But trying to give them realistic expectations at the start, having a process lined up so that when it does happen, there's not a lag, there's not like a slowness of not knowing what to do with them type of thing. Having you as that certainty to guide them through it really helps, and expressing condolences. And that's the best way to hopefully hold on to them. So the next step is trying to get them to take new cats. So you basically restart the process. They're looking at the foster pleas again, and ideally they'll still be in your email group or they'll rejoin. But you can also contact them directly once you know that they're vacant, especially if they work with a very specific population of your cats. But usually, especially as your foster numbers increase so dramatically, it gets a little harder to do as many one-on-one emails to get cats placed. So, now we have the problem fosters. Not everyone's going to magically walk through this process as well. So we'll have unresponsive fosters, which it's important to create a chain of escalation on. So sometimes it'll be that our mentors have contacted them several times and they haven't gotten the answer. So I'll ask them to send me that email thread, and then I'll contact them several times so that they see, like, there are multiple people trying to contact me about the same thing. Okay, maybe I should answer. You want to track the communication attempts, which is part of why having it all on the same email thread can be helpful, but also putting it on your foster tracking spreadsheet. You can list what dates you contacted them, if you gave them any deadlines or something. That way it's an easy spot you can look at. You don't have to remember to search your inbox. You can also try multiple forms of communication, so email, phone calls. You can threaten to repossess the cat or pursue legal action. Our legal action is sending a legal letter, which does not sound all that scary. So I usually tell people, if you don't return it by X date, then we'll be forced to pursue legal action, because the vagueness of that sounds a little bit more intimidating. And if none of that works, then you actually have to follow through on it. And unfortunately, when we do send the legal letters, if they don't follow through on that, then usually we just outcome the animal as stolen. We don't really pursue further legal action. With negligent fosters, then you get more into disciplinary action. So based on the severity of the negligence, you might just need to rediscuss protocols with them, or you might need to restrict their fostering options, or you might need to ban them altogether. So we've had fosters who have returned the cat and left it outside the building in a carrier. They're banned. Like, there is no reason to rediscuss protocols with them, because that's just craziness. But then there are fosters who, they might not have kept a socialization cat isolated or something, and then they really struggled with it, and they tell us about a month later that it hasn't come around and it's now 3 months old and a lot more difficult to work with. So rediscussing why we do those things with them to help them better work with that. Restricting the fostering options. So if we have a foster who has done ringworm before, and I guess they let the ringworm cats all over their house, and so now there's ringworm all over the house, and anything else we place with them now gets ringworm, we might restrict them to only having ringworm cats to begin with, because if everything else is going to get it, might as well just give them the ones that already got it. And it's really important to maintain a listing of who is banned and restricted, and explain why on your spreadsheet, why they're banned and restricted, so that way if they come back and they want to foster, you remember why they aren't allowed to. You can see that they aren't allowed to. The other people on your team can see it. And if they try to argue it with you, then you kind of have some information to approach it with. So, just a quick recap. We talked about recruiting fosters, that there is no magic answer for it, but you will want to work closely with your marketing team to do it. We look through the fostering process from start to finish, from the application process, through placing the cats in foster, looking at what to do once the cats are there, and getting the cats out of foster, and the different volunteers and everything that you need throughout that process. And we discussed a little bit about what to do with problem pupils.